Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. Today we're back with the Green Tide, good old Gabos, and we're facing off against the Empire, who have taken up a position up on the hill here with a heavy armor division. Yes, indeed, double steam tank for the Empire, which you don't see these things too often, mostly because they're crap, but we'll go over that in just a moment here. My opponent has brought two of them. He's also got a front line of swordsmen here, Sigmar's Sons in the center, two spearmen, an arch lector, which I'm a fan of, as you guys know. He's got Grand Hammer of Sigmar, Grand Shield of Faith, and a Soulfire. He's also got a Grey Wizard here with Melkoth's and Penumbral Pendulum. One unit of Demogryph Knights, in fact the Royal Altdorf Gryphites here, unsupported, but still nonetheless very, very scary. Like, actually, they do cause terror. So, anyway, I've also got a Vanguard here of some Free Company Militia, a couple Outriders with grenade launchers, and, yeah, that's pretty much it for my opponent. For myself, I've gone with my full-on Gabo Vanguard list, so we've got four Night Goblins, some with Fanatics, and, of course, two Regiments of Renown. We've also got the Night Gobbo Archers here, Rustiers, and two Night Gobbo Archers. The Gobbo Great Shaman going to be leading the way, four Skulkers, four Squig Hoppers, with, of course, the Durkit Squigs. We've also got the two Regiment of Renown Skirmish Cav. Over on this side, the Mangy Marauders and the Deaf Creepas. And over on this side, the Moon Howlers as well. So let's get things underway. You can see right off the bat we're going to be running up the hill and assaulting the heavy armor position here. Meanwhile, I discovered these Free Company Militia. I thought, you know, maybe we could charge in potentially with my Skirmish Cav here, but that's going to be less efficient than using the anti-infantry of the Squig Hoppers. So, of course, Squigs do have anti-infantry, a plus 10 bonus versus infantry, which is actually pretty decent. They'll also get a nice downhill charge here, so they should be able to shut down these Free Company momentarily. Meanwhile, Royal Altdorf Gryphites taking some fire here from the Gobbo firing squad. They don't necessarily want to engage with those nasty Skulkers. And of course, poison, and we also dropped that Gorkle Fix-It in his pocket just in case they did decide to charge in. They actually pulled away there, but grenade launchers coming in doing some really nice damage to the Warlord's boys there. The grenade launchers are very scary as the Greenskins with your lighter infantry if they get into a nice blob, and they are doing some good damage so far. We're going to come around with my own missile units and try and screen them out a little bit. Royal Altdorf Gryphites are at risk of getting a little bit isolated, though. You can see we're going to pop the wall right now as a lot of these units start to charge in this main engagement here. 8-Peak Loonies going to be getting into this front line here, mixing it up with the state troops. Archlector comes in, starts dropping his buffs, and the Squig Hoppers are going to be used with their armor piercing and buffed up stats from the WA, going to be coming in and taking on the steam tank. They also have immune to psychology, so they won't be terrified by the big scary tank. Meanwhile, Royal Altdorf Gryphites is getting dragged down by hundreds of Gobbos, literally hundreds of Gobbos. Meanwhile, the Outriders taking some damage they don't want, so they're going to pull away from my skirmish squad there. We are going to pull these Squigs back eventually, who just finished off those Free Company over on the far side. And yeah, this main pocket here, pretty pitched. I mean, obviously the Durkit Squigs not going to be able to hang around for too long, but they did do some okay damage there. The Archlector doing a good job mitigating with that Grand Shield of Faith, and also going to be dropping the Grand Soulfire here, which will do some good damage to the 8-Peak Loonies. Actually, not as much as I would have thought there. But the Gobbos on the low ground here suffering a little bit, but we are cleaning up this side very effectively. We're also bringing around the Skirmish Cav to start shooting, particularly these Mangy Marauders with their armor-piercing missiles, going to be very strong shooting at the steam tanks. So we're going to bring them around and start to do so. The Gobbo firing squad, of course, on foot, also going to be firing at the steam tanks. Doing some pretty good damage, although even with the Rusty Airs, the steam tanks are only going to be down to 130 armor, so, you know, how good is it actually? Who's to say? But anyway, going to be doing at least a minimum 1 armor-piercing damage, since that's what they have baseline. But yeah, the infantry fight's definitely going to go in our favor here. You can see Gorkle Fix-It here, just trying to debuff the speed of all these units in this pocket in case the steam tanks try and make a beeline, for example, for my archers, who, speaking of which, are getting grenaded quite badly. They're pulling up the hill, and we're going to use these Squig Hoppers to screen out the Outriders here. A little bit of mismicro by me, a little bit late on the attack order there, but we are going to get the attack order off in just a moment. And the fact that we're so close means that once we hit that charge speed, if we get an attack or two, once that poison applies, you can see, yep, the poison is now applied, and those Outriders are going to have a hard time getting away from the Squig Hoppers there. So very beneficial for me. You can see the Empire infantry starting to crumble away and mostly just leaving the steam tanks and the heroic core of the Empire. And yeah, steam tanks are decent. They cause terror. They're unbreakable, but if you compare their melee stats to something like, say, a Stegadon, they're pretty subpar. Their weapon strength and melee defense in particular are just super weak for the cost, and their ranged attack is okay. It's not amazing, it's decent, but I really don't think they're worth the cost in any situation. I think, you know, they're a fun pick certainly, and if you're trying to meme, you know, why not take a couple steam tanks? But certainly they are not the most effective picks. You can see them taking the fire, just the relentless fire of hordes and hordes of gobos. Most of the infantry's gone now, so they're going to push through, but looks like a Gorful Fix-It going down, and also a Smoke Bomb debuffing. Unfortunately, they did hit that charge speed already, but the Gorful Fix-It does affect charge speed. I guess Smoke Bomb does too, actually, and Gorful Fix-It does not, in fact. Huh, interesting. But anyway, they're going to get caught here, and even the Gabo Great Shaman with his very low melee attack can get hits in because of the very low melee defense. Only 10 melee defense on steam tanks, which is just pitiful. So yeah, even the Gabo Great Shaman in melee is going to be okay against the steam tanks. They do have an anti-infantry bonus. Let's see here. A 15, that's not terrible. But they just don't have enough stopping power, and they don't have the defensive stats either. I mean, 160 armor is great and all. Being unbreakable is nice, but 10 melee defense, really? This one has managed to pick up an XP Chevron through the course of the battle, but just the fact that it's so expensive means that you're going to sacrifice so much of your army trying to protect it and building around it. You can see this steam tank has gone down here in a blaze of fire. Empire leadership probably going to give up the fight relatively soon. Archlector is trying to pound on here. There's just way too many gobos for him to handle. And another smoke bomb going to keep them just fighting in this pocket here and unable to mostly pull away. The terror is going to be somewhat of an issue, although quite a few of the Gabo regiments of renown, and like the Squig Hoppers, for example, are immune to psychology. These Mangy Marauders, notably, also immune to psychology, which is always nice. But yeah, speaking of the Squig Hoppers, Durkit Squigs is going to come in here, and the Squigs are going to start chewing on the armor pieces on the side, you know, biting at the wheel, biting at these little sprockets and doodads on the back, and just generally tearing the steam tank apart. So yeah, it's going to be rough for the Empire, to say the least. We'll fast forward a little bit through this late game engagement, as it is mostly just me wailing on this steam tank here. But yeah, the Archlector and the Shadow Wizard eventually do give up the fight. And at this point, it's just the steam tank here, so we'll soak up a little bit more cinematics since we don't get to see this thing in actual action too often. But let's just all appreciate how cool looking it is and how terrible it actually is in combat. You can see the Shaman dropping a nice little spell there. Probably sneaky stabbing on one of these Squig Hoppers, and down goes the steam tank. So, well played to my opponent. Hope you guys enjoyed watching that one. Yeah, both the steam tanks, you can see, were able to rack up quite a few kills and get some good XP chevrons, but yeah, just the fact that his army was so thin through the infantry corps meant that they got isolated very quickly, and once they get isolated, I mean, they'll do okay, but their low melee defense means that they'll take a lot of hits, especially because they have a relatively large footprint, so a lot of models can be doing attacks on them at the same time, and they'll, because of that low melee defense, they'll almost always get hits, and so even something that's non-AP and, you know, maybe not is going to be the best in melee can still do damage to it over time, and that attritional game, especially against a very high model count army, can potentially be rough. I mean, again, the terror is nice, but for my opponent, getting the Royal Altar of Griffites dragged down was pretty rough as well. The Outriders were able to be zoned out, and again, the infantry line just collapsed really hard. The Gobos were able to get some good kills across the board, and especially these Squig Hoppers, really like them in this matchup. You know, if you're going to go with the full-on Gabo thing, these guys can trade okay against cavalry. It's not great, but while you have the Waba up, at least, they can trade okay against cavalry with that extra charge bonus and melee attack. Not the best, but in this particular battle, they were very useful in that they have armor piercing, and they also have immune to psychology, so they can come in and do some reliable damage to those steam tanks once they're isolated. And of course, the anti-infantry bonus means it's very easy to clean up the supporting infantry to then isolate them, so you see how it's kind of a catch-22 there for the steam tank. So let's just quickly round out one more time. I've made videos about this before, but it's always nice to remind ourselves how terrible the steam tank actually is. So just once again, let's compare to the Stegadon, which I think is probably the closest comparison in terms of units that are currently in the game. The Doom Wheel is kind of a similar idea as well, although that is significantly cheaper. But the whatever it's called, the thing for the lizardmen, the Stegodon, is pretty similar in price here, so let's just compare them one-to-one and kind of see. So we have the Steam Tanks card here, so let's do a one-to-one comparison on the Stegodon. Actually, 500 points cheaper, so that's pretty significant. You can see it does have less health, or sorry, slightly more health, less armor, and obviously it's not unbreakable. It is slightly faster. Melee attack is the same, but this is, again, the most important part. The weapon strength is pretty important as well, but pay very particular attention to this part here. 10 melee defense for the Steam Tank, which is abysmal. 32 for the Stegodon, which is okay for a monster. That's expected. So I think that's the biggest issue, and the other major difference you can see, of course, is the weapon strength. Now, the Stegodon does do less damage at range, it has less shots, and has less range overall, but it does do poison, so there's kind of a trade-off there. But yeah, I mean, it has like less than a quarter of the weapon strength of the Stegodon. Literally less than a quarter of the weapon strength of the Stegodon. So that's why Steam Tanks are completely and totally useless. If they were to, say, double the melee defense and, say, double the weapon strength, then maybe you would see Steam Tanks used more often. But as they stand right now, I would definitely advise you guys not to take Steam Tanks unless you're trying to meme. And if you are, like my opponent's build there could have maybe worked if he had some healing to try and heal the Steam Tanks. I mean, obviously he did get some really good work done with the Shadow Sorcerer. I didn't catch much of it, but you guys saw in the end card there that he had racked up quite a few kills, mostly from Penumbral Pendulum and so on, but it probably would have been more cost-effective to just heal the Steam Tanks instead, so that, and your front line as well, so maybe they can hold out a little bit longer, and then the Steam Tanks can get a little bit more work done. Since they're so expensive, since you're investing so much in them, you might as well keep them healed up as much as possible. At least that's the way I look at it, but let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Hope you guys enjoyed watching this one. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.